The story of the man who gave his shoes. This story comes from a small town in the Philippines, where a young boy named Jess was living in a village that didn't have many resources. His family was poor, and he had to walk to school every day, which was a long distance through rough roads. One of the hardest things for Jess was that he didn't have shoes. The roads were often rocky and sometimes muddy, and it made his journey painful and difficult. One day, when Joss was walking barefoot through the streets on his way to school, he noticed a man sitting on the side of the road, his clothes ragged, but with a warm smile on his face. The man looked at Joss and noticed that he was struggling with the rough ground beneath his feet. Without saying a word, the man reached into a bag beside him, pulled out a pair of worn but sturdy shoes, and held them out to Joss. "I think these will fit you," the man said kindly. Joss stood there, stunned. He didn't know how to respond. Here was a man who had little, yet he was offering his own shoes to a stranger. The man's gesture wasn't out of pity. It was simply kindness. Joss, not sure whether he could accept such a gift, hesitated at first, but the man smiled again and repeated, "You need them more than I do." Joss took the shoes, thanking the man with all his heart. As he put them on, he could feel the warmth and the kindness of the act. The shoes fit perfectly, and as he walked away, he felt like he could walk faster, like the world wasn't as heavy on his shoulders. True story, the unexpected return. Years passed, and Joss moved to a larger city to continue his education. He started working hard and eventually became successful. He never forgot the kindness of the man who had given him his shoes. One day, while visiting his hometown, he decided to return to that same street where he had received the shoes all those years ago. He went searching for the man who had changed his life with such a simple act. After asking around, someone told him the man was still living in the village, but that he had been struggling for some time. He was sick, and no one had the means to help him. Joss found the man sitting on the same street, his face lined with age but still wearing the same warm smile. Joss approached him, this time with a bag full of new shoes that he had saved up to give back, along with a letter of gratitude for the man's kindness. "I've never forgotten what you did for me," Joss said, handing him the shoes. "These are for you, just like the ones you gave me all those years ago." The man took the shoes, tears welling up in his eyes. He hugged Joss tightly and said, "I knew you'd be okay. You have the heart to give, and that's what matters." The power of kindness. Jose's life had changed that day, not because of the shoes themselves, but because of the reminder that small acts of kindness can have a lasting impact. He was successful now, but he never forgot where he came from or the man who had helped him when he needed it most. The act of kindness didn't just change his life, it taught him the power of paying it forward, of sharing what you can, no matter how little you have. And as for the man, that day, when he received the new shoes, he knew his kindness had come full circle. He had planted a seed of compassion that would continue to grow, even after he was gone. Story 2. The true story of the miracle on the Hudson. On January 15, 2009, a plane with 155 people on board, U.S. Airways Flight 1549, struck a flock of geese shortly after taking off from LaGuardia Airport in New York City. The birds caused both engines to fail, and the plane lost power. The flight crew was in an incredibly difficult position. With no engines, the plane was going to crash. But there was one man, Captain Sully Sullenberger, who would make a life or death decision that would become the stuff of legend. The decision. Captain Sully was an experienced pilot. He'd been flying for over 40 years, and he had seen his fair share of emergency situations, but nothing quite like this. After the geese hit the plane, there was an instant loss of power. The plane was losing altitude fast, and Sully knew that there was no way he could make it back to the airport. The situation was dire. The plane was over the heavily populated Bronx area. Returning to LaGuardia was impossible. The only option was to try and land in the Hudson River. But to land in the river meant risking everything. The chances of making a safe water landing were slim. With only minutes to decide, Sully did what he'd trained to do. He stayed calm, focused, and made the decision to attempt an emergency water landing. He knew this would be dangerous, but it was his best shot. The landing. Sully instructed the crew to prepare for a water landing and then made the bold move. He maneuvered the Airbus A320 into a glide towards the Hudson River, avoiding the crowded areas of the city. The passengers, unaware of the severity of the situation, were still seated, some chatting, some texting. Seconds later, Sully landed the plane perfectly on the icy waters of the Hudson River. The aftermath. The impact was hard, but not catastrophic. The plane came to a halt, and the crew and passengers quickly evacuated. Rescue boats, including those from nearby ferries, arrived within minutes, pulling survivors from the freezing waters. It was a miracle. As news of the crash landing spread, Sully became a national hero. The event was dubbed the Miracle on the Hudson. People marveled at how he had made the impossible look easy. But it wasn't easy. It was the result of decades of training, experience, and, most importantly, his ability to remain calm under pressure. The legacy. Captain Sully's decision saved the lives of everyone on that plane. The story of his bravery became a symbol of what it means to stay calm in the face of disaster, to make difficult decisions when lives are on the line. His actions were a reminder of how one person's leadership and clear thinking can make a world of difference. In the aftermath, Sully was lauded by the public, given numerous honors, and even inspired a film starring Tom Hanks that told the story of that fateful day. What we can learn. This true story isn't just about heroism in a crisis. It's about how staying calm and thinking clearly during a crisis can make all the difference. Sully's ability to focus on what needed to be done, even under immense pressure, shows us that the right decisions, made with courage, can save lives even when everything seems to be falling apart. Story Trey, the girl who saved her brother. In the summer of 2013, a family in a small town in Kansas experienced something every parent fears. The unthinkable happened, and it was their young daughter who ended up saving her brother's life. Tiffany and her little brother Lucas, who was only 5 years old at the time, were playing outside in their backyard on a warm Saturday afternoon. The sun was shining, and they were having fun, nothing out of the ordinary. Suddenly, the family's dog, a large, friendly Rottweiler, started acting strangely. It was barking furiously, running in circles. At first, Tiffany thought it was just being playful, but the dog's behavior quickly turned aggressive. The dog lunged at Lucas, knocking him to the ground. Without warning, the dog attacked. Tiffany, just 7 years old, was terrified. She saw the dog on top of her little brother, biting and growling. In an instant, she knew she had to act. She didn't stop to think about the danger. She didn't even hesitate. The only thing Tiffany could think of was getting the dog off her brother. Tiffany ran toward them, yelling at the dog, trying to push it off Lucas. When that didn't work, she grabbed a nearby garden tool, a shovel, and began hitting the dog repeatedly. "Get off my brother," she screamed, her voice trembling but filled with determination. She wasn't going to let the dog hurt him anymore. The dog, startled by Tiffany's bravery, finally backed off just long enough for Tiffany to drag Lucas to safety. She pulled him away from the dog's reach and ran into the house, screaming for help. The aftermath. Tiffany's quick thinking saved Lucas' life, while he was seriously injured. The wounds were not life-threatening. Tiffany's parents rushed him to the hospital, where doctors treated his injuries, which included deep bites on his arms and legs. The dog, which had always been friendly before, was later put down by animal control authorities. It turned out that the dog had been suffering from a rare condition called rage syndrome, which causes unpredictable, violent outbursts in some dogs. It was a heartbreaking situation for the family, as they had loved the dog for years, but they knew it wasn't the same animal they had once trusted. But despite everything, Tiffany's actions were nothing short of heroic. She had managed to overcome her fear and acted in the way that saved her brother's life. The impact on the family. In the months following the incident, The family worked through the trauma of what happened, but Tiffany was always praised for her bravery. Her parents were in awe of how, in the face of such terror, their young daughter had stepped up and saved Lucas without thinking twice. Lucas, while physically recovering from the attack, often told people that his sister was his hero. She wasn't just his protector, she was the reason he was still alive. A lesson in courage. This story teaches us so much about courage, quick thinking, and the power of family. Tiffany, though only 7, showed remarkable bravery in the face of danger. She didn't freeze up or run away. She acted instinctively to protect the one she loved most, her little brother. Sometimes, bravery isn't about facing grand challenges or performing big feats. Sometimes, it's about acting in the small, intense moments when it matters most. And in this case, Tiffany proved that heroism comes in many forms, sometimes in the shape of a young girl with a garden shovel, willing to fight for her family.